of work do you do if you are an international business lawyer? So what is it that you get to do? Okay. And this will characterize what we mean when we say international business law. It's not public international law. So what is it? Okay. This is what will involve international business expansion and market entry. Okay. This is one thing that, which is characterized by the international law we are talking about. Incorporation and business licenses in foreign jurisdictions. Okay. It is a hell of an experience. Pardon my language, but I am telling you that it can be incredibly thrilling. Okay, because sometimes you are supposed to get that incorporation and license in in the kind of deadlines you haven't imagined, and you have to root through, you have to find the right kind of regulators and get it shaped and get it done. Okay.
So just a small question, guys.
Yes. Yes.
What do you think that if, say, suppose you are advising a company who is going to enter India or a company who is going abroad, doing a expansion, what are the things that will come? According to you, you can type on chat and let's see whether it matches with the things we are going to discuss or not. How many of it you get correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Labor laws, Prasanna is saying.
very good.
Okay.
Investment rules.
Business investment rules, business policy, regulatory bank, business regulation in that country's tax laws. So late. It
Perfect.
came so late.
Very good.
International disputes.
Disputes.
Okay. Antitrust issues. Of
Issues.
course, why not? DTA is
DTA.
tax basically. RBI rules so is your, FEMA related
Yeah.
regulations. Okay. Environmental regulations, tax, dispute, jurisdictions, incorporations. What is limitations of work? Business rankings.
Rankings.
Is that an area of work? Company law. Okay. But you will say, basically, you will talk about incorporating entities, may not necessarily characterized by separate kind of company law in all areas. All
All
commercial laws and
commercial.
practices.
One thing you still have missed.
What have you missed?
Guess what is like the important thing that you have missed? All of this is
Cross-border
okay.
insolvency, M&As, regulator, economic environment. No, we're talking about the
Work, work.
work. Contracts is got it.
Yeah, contracts.
Okay, so yeah, cross-border contracts, definitely. Okay,
And also
brilliant,
would
very good.
yeah, and also wouldn't you be worrying about enforcement as well? Not just the drafting part.
Yeah,
You
yeah, everything in contract.
everything.
Intellectual property protection, very good.
Very good.
Yeah, anti-money laundering.
Laundry.
Yeah, information and analysis.
That's very generic, Rupesh.
Yeah, very generic. So let's see what is the exact work.
Yeah, let's talk about what the work is
Yeah,
now.
yeah. So, foreign direct investment, FDI, and foreign exchange regulations in different countries. So now, you must know what are the kind of exchange control regulations in different countries. For us, we have a very detailed Foreign Exchange Management Act and regulations and everything. But now in countries like UAE, there can be none. Okay, nothing. So you have to find out what is the relevant foreign exchange regulation in that country and what needs to be done. Okay, also in consonance with what you have in India. Okay, because it is going to be a transaction which involves India as well. But this is something that you have to know what is a kind of exchange control regulation that is applicable in different countries. Very, very important, negotiating and drafting international contracts. It's not just drafting, guys. The thing is, you must be aware of how to negotiate the terms of the contracts as well. And just for this purposes also, you should be very clear or aware of how the economic and legal environment is in that country, because when you are putting a term, when you are looking at drafting contracts accordingly, you are not wanting it to be something which will not be enforceable in that jurisdiction. Okay, right from the beginning, it may not be enforceable in that jurisdiction. And then what are you going to do? So that's why you have to be very, very well aware of what works in that region when you are negotiating the terms of those contracts. Okay, and then you come to drafting them once you have bottom line the terms and you have negotiated. Tax structuring, this can be the reason why entities venture outside of the country. So very, very important, like you have to know how tax structuring works, okay, in international transactions. Compliance in foreign jurisdictions, like I said, like we were talking about the kind of penalty that you would have in UAE a little while back, like when if you don't have a license and you go and function, it can go into crazy amount of AD, lakh AD it will have, and then the exchange rate will practically kill you. Okay, so that's why compliance becomes very, very important when you are looking at doing business outside India. Legal inputs and advice for international business strategy. So, like, first of all, the question is where should I expand? Which country should I expand? Like, we looked one profile specifically on Upwork. It was very interesting to see that the guy had a 1 hour consultation, okay, on where should I open my business? Where should I open my company? Which country should I open my company? That is a 1 hour consultation for US dollars 90. It's a telephone call that you enter into with this guy. He advises you on where you should open your company. Okay. So legal inputs and advice for international business strategy. Risk assessment for international business. People have to check, like you are entering into some another, what is the risk that you have to check this, you have to think of conducting something that's called a risk analysis. Okay, because there are so many unknown factors that you face. Okay, so that you have to figure and you have to think of what if this will happen, what if this will happen. You always have to plan accordingly. There has to be a risk analysis that's done.
So,
IP registration. Yeah, yeah. You want to say something?
yeah, for risk analysis, I would say that to give you an example, when you're doing a risk assessment as a lawyer, you not only look at what the law is. For instance, if you're advising a client who is expanding into China, so not only you'll tell that this is what the law is, but in your risk assessment, you'll be like, what if things go wrong? How will you enforce it? A contract enforce होते भी हैं वहां पे. Second चीज,
Yeah.
how often the laws change, because in India we are very habitual that okay, this is the law, we'll go to judiciary, it is independent and it would be enforced. It doesn't happen in all the countries, so you have to understand the political context. कि
Yes.
अगर there will be political intervention. So yeah, these kind of things, this risk assessment is where you need to have a broader understanding of that particular thing.
Yeah. So this again yesterday, yes, interestingly, we were talking
Mm.
of, like why countries have investment protection treaties. Okay,
Yeah.
and you will see that there are cases where companies or entities say that we were not given the benefit of this investment protection treaty. What is that? That is basically like giving protection to an investment from the changes in local laws. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's the kind of importance that this has, that you have to think of what is the risk if the law changes, and if, like our investments become like it's not a viable business or entry anymore. So what
Yeah.
if that happens? So you have to think of a risk analysis in those terms.
Yeah.
IP registration and enforcement abroad. This is very essential because even really huge companies owning real, like brand names, they can fail if they are not very well aware of how things work in the local jurisdictions. Okay, smaller entities can come up and, like use the IP, and then, like it will be litigation. and it is possible that they are able to defeat it because they are aware there of how the IP enforcement works. But the bigger entity or multinational which is actually foraying into different jurisdiction is not aware. We have like landmark cases on IP being in this jurisdiction. Everyone has heard of that, like the Kodak story, and everyone has heard of like Supermax, or like the Big Mac brand name that McDonald's had. All these things, all it's like a situation where the entities were just not able to enforce, okay, and they were not able to get registration and enforcement for intellectual property, okay, or where entities actually went and enforced and destroyed, like their opponents, like which are relatively bigger
Yeah,
companies. That can
yeah.
also happen.
In fact, if you would go to India Kanun today and search for the top IP cases, most of them are fought by multinational corporations who have trademarks in other countries and who are entering into Indian jurisdiction, and vice versa. So that is the most important, because what are you doing? You're going to leverage your reputation abroad and come to a country. So this becomes the topmost priority, that this has to be enforced.
Yeah, it's very it's like on a very high importance level for entities that they have to enforce their IP. Dispute resolution in foreign jurisdictions, how does it work? Like, for ourselves in India, we are aware how the court system works, how arbitration works, what the provisions of Arbitration and Conciliation Act are. Everything we are aware of. But what about the foreign jurisdiction where we are going to have a presence in? So how, if we enter into a dispute there, what is going to happen? Okay, how does the uh, litigation mechanism work? How does the alternate dispute resolution mechanism work in that country? Can you actually give that to a third jurisdiction entirely which doesn't belong to like any of the parties to the contract? Can you use those mechanisms? So this is something that you will get to work on. Enforcing arbitration awards, it's this is huge. Like, you get arbitration awards in your favor, but actually getting them enforced in the other country is it's a task in itself. You have to be very, very well aware of how the system in that country takes a foreign award or a decree, and can it get enforced and implemented there. Okay. So even if you get things in your favor, if you are not through with this, then it doesn't work.